Part 4, The Fruit of Rock Continued, is the longest section yet, which means that host Eric Holmberg must have a lot more to say in this section. Not really. There was barely anything said in the first section. I barely even remember what was talked about, except for Eric's thoughts on AIDS.
And this eternal destruction is infinitely more tragic than the biological destruction that awaits somebody infected with AIDS.
I bet people with AIDS, or people who have lost loved ones due to AIDS, have some thoughts on that. If Satanism was the problem beforehand, then here it's really just rebellion.
Continuing with our examination of the byproducts of rock and roll, consider one of its greatest themes, rebellion.
Holy crap, they're flipping off the camera. According to the Bible, rebellion is witchcraft, and witchcraft is buying novelty items at a Spencer Gifts. Wasn't Jesus a rebel? I mean, I know that Jesus was a rebel is a popular slogan. I know I always ask myself, why can't punk rock be more for the establishment and the church? Punk, bro. Some of these quotes are more confusing here than in other parts combined.
As Rolling Stone magazine proudly noted in its 20th anniversary television special,
Rolling Stone sang Bad to the Bone and is George Thorogood as Jim Morrison. It's not even just fights that are bad, but words as well.
And that's what rock and roll ought to be. The kids ought to come up and just hit you right in the face. I don't mean breaking noses, but I mean with what it is they have to say.
This documentary has gone from being mad at self-mutilation to then being mad at disagreement. Hell, they're even upset at We Are the World and Live Aid because Live Aid included bands like Frankie Goes to Hollywood that sings about the joys of sex. Yeah, because that's what people debate about Live Aid. The only contribution this documentary would make to Africa is just talking shit about Toto for no reason. And what about this so-called fruit that I've been promised twice?
just as a bad tree cannot produce good fruit, so an industry rooted in rebellion against God and His Word can never bring forth that which is truly good.
They're not so much rebelling against God necessarily. It's more so that they're rebelling against people like you, the squares. And more evil songs are cited again for the millionth time, like Black Sabbath's Heaven and Hell. It's a song about the paths we take in life, be it right or wrong, you know, free will. But that changes when you put the word occult in big letters.
Like an invisible cancer that inevitably leads to death, so the satanic seed in rock and roll has culminated in a blatant obsession with the occult.
People dying of cancer would probably disagree with that. While talking about the pentagram, it fails to note the difference between the downward point and the upward point, as well as its connections with the elements of the earth, and simply just says that any and all uses of it means Satanism. Plus, there was that time that I created the hand gesture for the devil himself and caused rockers to do it. Even though Dio says that he got it from his grandmother, who knows? Where do I sacrifice a goat now?
No doubt the vast majority have little or no idea what they are communicating when they flash this sign. But this is true with most supernatural things.
And if you told them your thoughts on it, they probably wouldn't give a rat's ass. Probably because they have lives and other shit to worry about. I'm sure they wouldn't give a damn about the number of the beast either.
Revelation chapter 13 assigns that number to the beast, the Antichrist forces who war against God.
I think Revelation was written with the same drugs that wrote a lot of the psychedelic rock you hate. You see, this is how you're going to start losing younger viewers. You're starting to trash the 80s, and the 80s are very popular.
The 80s have seen the emergence of a macabre brand of rock that combines elements of punk, new wave, and even classical music.
Yeah, and it was awesome. If there's anything terrible here that came out of the 80s, it's that haircut.
The occult elements within this new genre are even more disturbing than those in heavy metal, because they are combined with an intelligence and poetic passion rarely found in the latter.
And this documentary hates intelligence, as evidenced by the next quote.
Later, the lingering evil spirits literally chase them right out of the dark studio, causing them to glance over their shoulders and laugh nervously as they spilled out into the street.
That literally misused the word literally. Sure, Diamanda Gallis has been an AIDS activist for decades, and who cares if they say their imagery comes from Christianity?
Because Scripture makes it clear that the purest manifestation of the Antichrist spirit always comes, not from without, but from within the context of Christianity.
All of rock and roll is the Antichrist. I think they've run out of stuff to say about Satanism, so very suddenly it switches over to voodoo with that documentary Angel Heart. Who knew Robert De Niro was really the devil?
But rock and roll has dabbled in and at times even embraced the essence of voodoo in a manner unique among other contemporary musical styles.
So?
Fleetwood Mac, for example, incorporated not only the rhythms into their live performance of their hit song World Turning, they included voodoo's ceremonial dress as well.
So, with a lesson on voodoo from Eric Holmberg, I wouldn't be surprised if he hates voodoo because that means the events of Lucio Fulci's Zombie will happen. This is mainly just knocking all artists who've ever said they've been inspired by voodoo or influenced by the Greek goat god of Pan, with their examples being Stairway to Heaven. But I'm sure you're alright with the part that's about a woman getting rich, yet not getting anything else in life, and then not getting into heaven. Ooh, doesn't get much more demonic than Robert Palmer was addicted to love about actual addiction.
Pan himself was there. Several times I witnessed the instant when the current began to surge in earnest and course through the quivering frame of a local shepherd. When the power came down,
I bet that really happened. I'm sure there's some evidence.
all around us evidence abounds that the fierce and stampeding angels of hell have been released.
And why am I so bored all day? And I'm sure Jesus had thicker skin than Eric Holmberg.
True to the satanic form, Jesus is ignored or made fun of.
Jesus was crucified. I'm not sure if words really hurt him all that much. Oh good, we're back to Satanism and the trashing of the girlfriends of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. Like that's any of my business. Though this is giving me more movies to watch.
And Pallenberg sponsored Lucifer Rising, a movie that showed, quote, the actual ceremonies to make Lucifer rise, end quote.
That's an experimental film with a flying saucer in it. It's not a documentary. Oh, but Jimmy Page owns an occult bookstore, and this.
According to Zeppelin chronicler Stephen Davis, the album was launched at a blasphemous Halloween party at the Chiselhurst Caves.
Yeah, 'cause I like my Halloween parties safe and politically correct. Enough of Kenneth Unger, leave some for Aleister Crowley.
The Stiff Kittens feature Crowley on an album cover, as did the Beatles on what was to become, many critics believe, the most significant album in rock music history.
That cover's also got Tony Curtis, Mae West, and a garden gnome on it, which is why I worship all three of those things. What better evidence of spirit worship is there than anything Jim Morrison says?
The souls of the ghosts of those dead Indians, maybe one or two of them, were just running around, freaking out.
I've seen Wayne's World 2, and again, his personal life is really none of my business.
Morrison married a witch in a ritual that involved satanic invocations and the drinking of blood. A year later, the self-professed shaman or witch doctor of rock and roll was dead.
Which means she and Satan killed him, obviously. Look, it's not really that I'm disagreeing with what the documentary says about certain musicians and their religious or occult beliefs and quotes attributed to that. It's that I don't care. If I can still be a fan of an actor or a filmmaker whose political beliefs I may disagree with, then I can still listen to The Doors.
This album embraces two themes near to the great beast's heart: homosexuality and the worship of Pan.
Okay, though, the homophobia here, that I can certainly disagree with. Not even band mascots are off limits.
Iron Maiden's mascot, Eddie, is purportedly a lost soul who was brought back to life by the band's music.
Eddie the mascot's not real. Just like I'm sure a band's use of the Ouija board probably didn't result in the events of The Exorcist. But what do I know? Tell me more about Satanist Alice Cooper, who's a born-again Christian. The rest of this section mainly has to do with backward philosophy and backmasking.
Let him constantly watch, if convenient, films and listen to records reversed.
Well, that's just a silly way to watch a movie. Memento, obviously made by Satan. And Headless Cross is a song about people in the Middle Ages going to the hill of the Headless Cross and then praying to God and dying. Anyway, about backmasking.
Backward phenomena is quite common throughout the occult world and in the lives of those who have been affected by its power.
Says the man with a backwards hairstyle. So backwards lyrics are all part of Satan's plan, or not. What are you trying to tell me?
It could be argued that there is no significance here beyond the fact that three guys like to get weird, probably just as a gimmick to sell records.
But let's pretend it's not.
So what if there is some subliminal suggestion going on here? As we've already seen, you don't need backmasking to pollute someone's mind and heart.
Duh. Hence this documentary existing. Then he says that the backwards lyrics and songs aren't intentional or accidental, but spiritual.
That outside intelligent forces with supernatural power are occasionally able to play an artist much like we would play a musical instrument.
Sure. Eric shows some examples of songs played backwards, like ELO's El Dorado, which the band denied to the extent that they poked fun at this by putting backmasking in their next album, Face the Music. But that's not the only example. I could say bullshit, but that's probably more accurate than anything that was in Bohemian Rhapsody. Next on the countdown is Cheap Trick.
One more time.
Sounds more like someone attempting to speak Klingon. I think you should add the word allegedly to a lot of this.
One of the translations for Lucifer, a Latin title commonly associated with Satan, is the Shining One.
And God is a dog. They go back to Stairway to Heaven because this doc is against, changing the direction in your life.
No doubt the man who played the drums in that song thought that, until he found himself choking in his own vomit. And by then, it was too late.
You know, using someone's death to promote your own religious views is worse than all of those bad things you hate about music. And that's the time that he picks to try converting me.
Then this is almost certainly your day. Maybe you're frightened, nervous, or uptight. That's all right. God can take care of that.
Well, I suppose he's doing a better job than Estes Perkle.
Will you come? Will you come?
And Eric Holmberg is quite unintentionally hilarious with his segues.
The gift of God's forgiveness, His love, and His life. Back to Stairway to Heaven.
Yeah, come join my flock, but about my badass Zeppelin collection. The next part of the doc is the fifth and final part, which Eric actually teases this time out.
In the next and final section, we'll share with you how your life can be changed and you can find the freedom and love that is in Jesus Christ.
Okay, but can I still take my Tears for Fears albums with me? Oh, and the fifth part is called The Axe Falls, because it's all just Eric chasing down these bands with a giant axe. Or at least I hope that's what it is. That'd be more entertaining than the egg test.
All